The horrors of war can be overwhelming, at the human level creating situations of confusion and extreme loss. World War I was one of the largest and deadliest global wars in history, called at the time the war to end all wars, because of its scale of destruction. Here are two reflections on mysterious events in the so-called Great War, which still leave a question in our minds today. Number 2. The Angels of Mons. An astonishing story from the Allied front line of World War I is that of the Angels of Mons. Despite being debunked as mass hysteria, hallucinations of exhausted soldiers, or simply a hoax intended to boost public morale, there seem to have been many witnesses with corroborating accounts of the incident. The Battle of Mons was the first major advance in 1914 of the British Expeditionary Force, in alliance with the French Army. Battalions of men were attempting to counter the powerful and relentless German force attacking from the Belgian west and southwest. 3 days into the conflict, the Allied troops were holding their own against the enemy. Unfortunately, they were heavily outnumbered and, with mounting casualties, forced into retreat by night and in driving rain. However, in the midst of the damaging retreat, portending assured destruction, strange events began to emerge all around the men. In one action during the heartbreaking slog back, a decimated British battalion, about to be massacred by the German force, became aware of a shadowy army of bowmen fighting beside them. A thundering voice was heard to shout, "Hooray! Hooray!" above the clash of the conflict, as an onslaught of arrows darkened the sky. Elsewhere, at around the same time, exhausted British soldiers saw tall, ethereal figures materialize in the darkness above the German lines. The beings were winged like angels. As they hovered in the dark sky, the German lines inexplicably ceased their advance, enabling the British to safely withdraw. There were so many similar eyewitness accounts of these events from both sides that their occurrence is difficult to dismiss. At the same time, there were also numerous alleged sightings of St. George, the patron saint of England, leading the charge in the affray. One wounded soldier later asked the nurse to show him a coin with his picture of St. George, whom he identified as leading the British troops into battle. His description was confirmed by several other soldiers, who saw a tall, yellow-haired man, looking just like his depiction on the gold sovereign of the day, on a white horse, in golden armour, and raising his sword. German prisoners captured in the action explained their withdrawal from the battle as due to seeing strong reinforcements coming up behind the Allied troops, when in fact the ground behind the British unit was empty. One prisoner asked who was the officer on the great white horse, as they had been unable to hit him with bullets. They also said that they were astounded that their enemies had suddenly reverted to wearing armour and firing arrows. A later story in the 1915 North American Review claimed that following this confrontation, German field officers had found hundreds of bodies of their soldiers lying on the battlefield. The men had no discernible wounds, leading to their conclusion that the Allies had been using a toxic gas, which was not the case. There were many reliable eyewitness accounts of the angelic apparitions, from the high-ranking officers down, and including those in letters to friends and family at home. One Lance Corporal told his nurse that he and his comrades observed the radiant presences, which started as a strange light in mid-air. This was his description. The light became brighter, and I could see quite distinctly 3 shapes, one in the centre having what looked like outspread wings. The other 2 were not so large, but were quite plainly distinct from the centre one. They were above the German line, facing us. We stood watching them for about 3/4 of an hour. Captain Hayward, an intelligence officer with British One Corps, later spoke of 4 or 5 wonderful beings, draped in white, who faced the German front line with hands upraised to halt their advance. Multiple separate accounts describe the terror of the German horses on sighting the celestial beings, taking fright and bolting, thereby further enabling the British to move to safety. One man said that he and his troop had been trapped in a quarry by German cavalry when, eerily, angels lined the edge of the quarry and the Germans dispersed in panicked flight. Another soldier, who had become lost with his regiment, saw a glow in the darkness that revealed the figure of a female angel, in white robes and with a gold band around her hair. She beckoned to the group of exhausted men and led them through the night to a sunken road which provided an escape from danger, a road that they had previously been unable to find and later could not find again on any map. It is worth remembering that those who told these stories, although battle-fatigued, were experienced and resilient soldiers who had been trained to endure hardships. Perhaps some of the stories were invented, but a great many of the witnesses saw identical sightings at different times and in different places. The Angels of Mons to this day remains an intriguing mystery. Number 1. The Vanished Battalion. For 100 years, historians have tried to solve the tragic mystery of what has become known as the Lost Sandringhams, a battalion of men who on one day were bravely charging their Turkish enemies and the next had completely disappeared. E-Battalion was an unusual and elite group of British soldiers who were all former staff from the Royal Estate at Sandringham. The battalion was formed at the request of the British monarch, King Edward VII, with every man on the estate, from the land agent down to the lowliest servant, recruited and ranked according to class. With others enlisted from all over northern Norfolk, the battalion expanded to become known as the Royal Norfolk Regiment or the King's Company. It was dispatched to the Gallipoli Peninsula of Turkey in 1915 as part of the disastrous Dardanelles campaign and encountered its first intense skirmish on August the 11th. The following day, the soldiers were again ordered to advance on Turkish positions, and a group of 250 men, including 16 officers, forged through the machine gun and sniper fire and were last seen marching through heavy smoke into a wooded area. Some witnesses said much later that the men had walked into low clouds of heavy mist and simply vanished from sight and sound. The mystery of the group, now called the Lost Sandringhams, is that there were no survivors. Their bodies were never found and they did not turn up as prisoners of war. Their loved ones at home were never informed what had happened to them, just that they had been reported missing. A bizarre theory was put forward in 1965 by 3 New Zealand war veterans who say they witnessed the men marching up a sunken road to where 6 to 8 loaf-shaped clouds hovered. They said that one cloud had descended to the ground and that the battalion marched directly into this low-lying cloud, which then rose slowly up until it joined the other clouds in the sky, leaving no trace of the men. The story has led to speculation that the soldiers were abducted by a UFO. However, it seems more likely that some of the men may have perished in skirmishes along the march, which had ventured too far behind enemy lines. Others reached the farm where they may have met their end at the hands of Turkish troops, who did not like to take prisoners. To date, only 3 of the missing soldiers have been positively identified. One man is mentioned in an unearthed 1960 newspaper article in the Lynn News as having sent his mother a letter from a prisoner of war hospital in Constantinople, which is now Istanbul. Another 2 were identified in a makeshift mass grave on a Turkish farm. However, given the lack of evidence and scant identification, the fate of 263 Sandringhams is still a tragic mystery to their families and descendants. They joined the sad legacy of World War I, wherein 13,000 people rested in unidentified graves, while another 14,000 were simply never found.